Dark psychology technique. Creating a scapegoat. Faceless masks. Secrets they don't want you to know. Copyright NLP Radio. Introduction. In a world that becomes more complex and mysterious every day, we are always searching for answers that can calm our minds. But what if I told you that some answers are nothing more than mere illusions? An illusion that drags us along until the truth fades from our sight. At the heart of this enigmatic world are mental games with ruthless power. Games that ensnare us by manipulating emotions, fears, and beliefs. In this book, you will become acquainted with one of the most dangerous of these games, the blame game. A technique that guides minds toward an imaginary enemy, an enemy that may not even exist. But why is this game so effective? Why do we have a tendency to quickly seek out someone to blame and avoid a deep analysis of the facts? What happens that traps us in this game without us even realizing it? In this book, we will explore these questions and many others. Each chapter will take you on a journey where you will not only uncover the truth but also become familiar with the hidden layers of the human psyche that few dare to explore. This is a journey into the darkest depths of the mind, where masks fall away and true faces are revealed. Are you ready to confront the truth? A truth that might challenge all your beliefs? This book is for those who have the courage to delve into this darkness and accept whatever they find. Now, if you still wish to continue this journey, turn the page and enter a world where nothing is as it seems. Chapter 1. Masks of History. Have you ever wondered why, in some moments of crisis, fingers point at a specific person or group? What force is behind this behavior that makes everyone quickly accept that the blame lies solely with them? Throughout history, this behavior has repeated itself numerous times. Innocent people labeled as sinners, communities condemned to hostility against humanity without reason, all to divert public attention from the truth. But this is not all. The root of this behavior lies deep within the human psyche. We, as humans, seek answers to every question, even if that answer comes at the expense of sacrificing someone else. Psychological definition. Creating a scapegoat, or scapegoating, refers to attributing all problems and failures to a particular person or group that often has no role in creating those problems. This behavior is a defensive mechanism that humans use to reduce their anxiety and guilt. This mechanism allows individuals or communities to divert their negative emotions toward an external target instead of facing a difficult truth. This act is not only individual but collective, and has been repeated in various forms throughout history. A look at history. Travel back to ancient Greece, where a ritual called pharmakos existed. In this ritual, an individual, often a member of the community, was chosen as a scapegoat. This person was considered the representative of all the sins and misfortunes of the community, and was eventually either exiled or killed, with the hope that the community would become pure and free of sins. This pattern has been repeated throughout history. In the Middle Ages, many women were burned as witches simply because societal crises needed a scapegoat. The Crusades, the Inquisition, and many other historical events are examples of this technique where a group was introduced as an enemy to divert attention from real issues. Philosophy and psychology. But why does this technique work? The philosophy behind this behavior goes back to the belief that humans in times of crisis need to feel that they have control over the situation. Introducing an external enemy gives them the feeling that they can solve the problem without having to confront the real issues. This technique is effective not only on an individual level but also on the level of communities and even nations. Psychologists believe that humans tend to seek out simple patterns to explain the complexities of the world. This tendency to follow simple solutions can lead to the scapegoating of innocent individuals. For many, accepting that a particular person or group is the cause of all problems is easier than understanding and accepting the real complexities. And now that we revealed the secret, do you still believe that your real enemies are those whom society has shown you? Or maybe the truth is hidden elsewhere, where only the brave dare to look. Join us as we peel away more layers of these faceless masks and delve deeper into this psychological technique. What you find at the end may be more bitter and unsettling than you expected. But this is the only path that leads to the truth. Chapter 2. A Mirror to Darkness. Have you ever experienced a moment when, at the height of a crisis, your first reaction was to look for someone to blame? Did this reaction bring you a sense of relief and comfort, even if only for a short while? This simple and seemingly insignificant reaction actually has roots in the deepest layers of our psyche. The human mind naturally tends to deal with problems and challenges in the simplest way possible. When situations become critical, anxiety and stress rise rapidly. In such conditions, our brain looks for a way to reduce this pressure. Finding a scapegoat is one such way. But why? Why can finding someone to blame provide such comfort? When we identify someone as the scapegoat, we unconsciously feel a sense of control over the situation. At that moment, it feels as if the problem has been identified and now we can focus on solving it. But this is just an illusion that our mind creates to free us from the heavy burden of negative emotions and anxiety. But have you thought about what happens to the person who is identified as the scapegoat? For them, the world becomes a nightmare. Their mind becomes entangled in complex games, from which there may be no escape. A person who is identified as the enemy not only faces negative emotions from others but also internalizes these feelings. They start to doubt themselves, perhaps even believing that they are truly at fault. This process serves as a defensive mechanism against painful reality, as accepting the truth that we might be innocent and wrongfully accused is psychologically challenging. These defensive mechanisms, occurring in both the mind of the victim and the accuser, are some of the most complex and powerful tools in psychology. Mechanisms used to protect ourselves from bitter realities. But at what cost does this protection come? Do these mechanisms truly shield us from real harm, or do they simply keep us away from facing the truth? In moments when it seems the world is against us, our mind quickly searches for simple solutions. Scapegoating is one such solution. But instead of leading us to the truth, this solution plunges us into an endless spiral of delusions. Now, as we approach the end of this chapter, it may seem that understanding these mechanisms could save us from their grasp. But is it really so? When you face the next crisis, will you be able to stop this natural reaction? Or perhaps, just perhaps, we are all participating in a game from which we can never escape. This is just the beginning, a beginning to explore the deeper layers of this dark psychology. There is still much to discover, and a long way ahead. Are you ready to confront more truths? Chapter 3. Hidden Puzzles. In a world that is becoming more complex and information-rich every day, finding the truth is not an easy task. Many of us, without even realizing it, fall into traps set by others. This trap is nothing but clever techniques used for creating a scapegoat. But how do these techniques work? And why are they so effective? Imagine you are in your workplace, and a project you are working on suddenly encounters a problem. There is immense pressure on you and your colleagues. What is the first reaction of many people in such situations? Finding someone to blame. Perhaps one of your colleagues seems to have failed in their duties, or maybe one of the managers made a decision that you think was wrong. In such a situation, people quickly start blaming others without truly analyzing the situation. This is the first technique, immediate blame. This technique is so common that it has become a routine in many work environments. Instead of seeking real solutions, people spend their time finding someone to blame. But this is just one of the ways the blame-shifting technique is used in everyday life. Another highly effective technique is creating an external enemy. In this method, instead of internal individuals or groups being blamed, an external enemy is introduced. This technique is especially used in larger organizations and institutions. Imagine a large company facing problems in the market. Instead of focusing on internal reasons, the managers might blame competitors and divert attention from internal issues. This method is not only seen in organizations but also in political and international contexts. Let's delve a bit deeper into this technique. Media and social networks play a significant role in amplifying this technique. In a world where information circulates rapidly, finding and introducing potential enemies is easier than ever. A small rumor can turn into major news within hours, convincing thousands of people that a person or group is responsible for their problems. The media, due to their widespread influence, can easily direct public sentiment. By using sensational headlines, images, and superficial analyses, they can easily create imaginary enemies and direct public opinion toward them. This technique has become one of the most powerful tools of control in the modern world. Imagine encountering news every day where a particular group or individual is blamed for all societal problems. Gradually, this image becomes ingrained in your mind and turns into belief. This is what makes the blame-shifting technique one of the most effective methods of controlling public opinion. But is what we see and hear really the truth? Or is it just a small part of a larger picture that we are unable to see? In a world where information is constantly changing, distinguishing truth from falsehood is harder than ever. But perhaps it is time for us to think a bit more, investigate a bit deeper, and before quickly blaming someone, ask ourselves, is this really the truth? By the end of this chapter, you may be wondering how to avoid these complex traps. Is there a way to escape this psychological game? The answers to these questions will be revealed as we continue this journey. But until then, let's look more closely at the information we receive daily. Perhaps there is something hidden within it that we have not yet noticed. Chapter 4. Breaking the bonds. Every society is like a living organism, an organism that stays alive and connected through social and cultural bonds. But what happens when one member of this organism is unjustly blamed as the culprit? Is it just a minor mistake that can be easily overlooked, or could this mistake be the spark that ignites the flames of social collapse? Creating a scapegoat might seem like a short-term and temporary solution at first glance, but it leaves long-term and profound effects on society and individuals. This technique acts like a poison that slowly infiltrates the veins of society and gradually contaminates social relationships. Social and cultural effects. In a society where the blame-shifting technique is used frequently, public trust rapidly diminishes. People, instead of trusting each other and working together, look for ways to protect themselves and blame others. This social mistrust not only damages human relationships, but also causes the society to gradually disintegrate. Creating a scapegoat can cause division and conflict within society. Different groups, instead of collaborating and uniting, view each other as enemies. This division can deepen social and cultural rifts, eventually splitting society into opposing factions. A culture where blame shifting has become a normal behavior is a culture of mistrust and fear. In such a culture, individuals, rather than focusing on creativity and cooperation, are more concerned with self-preservation and personal interests. This can lead to a decrease in innovation and progress within the society and weaken the collective spirit. Social collapse. If the blame-shifting technique is used continuously and repeatedly in society, it can lead to social collapse. When a group is labeled as the enemy and others accept this, society divides into us and them categories. This division gradually leads to hostility and tension, which can escalate into violence and social conflicts. Moreover, when social trust erodes and people become suspicious of one another, social systems and public institutions also suffer from this mistrust. Trust in the government, media, and public institutions decreases, which can exacerbate political and social crises. Long-term effects on human and organizational relationships. On an individual level, blame shifting can severely damage personal relationships. Friends and colleagues who once trusted each other now view one another as enemies. This mistrust and hostility not only ruin personal relationships, but can also lead to isolation and loneliness. In organizational environments, the blame-shifting technique can have devastating effects. Organizations where this technique is frequently employed gradually experience disorder and decreased productivity. Employees, instead of focusing on their work and striving for organizational progress, are more concerned with self-preservation and blaming others. This behavior creates an unhealthy and tense work environment, ultimately leading to the collapse of the organization. Creating a scapegoat may initially seem like a simple and quick solution, but it is like a fire under the ashes that gradually burns everything in its path. This technique affects not only the individual labeled as the enemy, but also the entire society and human relationships, leaving long-lasting effects that cannot be easily overlooked. By the end of this chapter, you may have come to the conclusion that while blame shifting may appear to be beneficial in the short term, it ultimately brings nothing but destruction and collapse in the long run. But can we escape this vicious cycle? Is there a way to free ourselves from this dangerous technique? These questions will guide us as we continue this journey. Chapter 6. Answering your questions. In this chapter, we will address the most important questions that may arise in your mind about the scapegoating technique. The aim is to equip you with more information to combat this technique and avoid falling into its traps. Why do people tend to blame others? Blame shifting provides individuals with a sense of control and relief. When a problem arises, the human mind seeks a simple and quick way to reduce anxiety. Finding an external scapegoat can create the feeling that the problem has been identified and can now be addressed. This natural reaction is due to the human need to maintain mental health and avoid severe negative emotions. How can one tell if someone is using this technique? Detecting whether someone is using the scapegoating technique requires careful observation and analysis of the situation. Key signs include providing superficial reasons without thorough examination, attempting to divert attention from the main issue to a specific person or group, and using intense emotions, such as fear, anger, or hatred, to rally support. If someone blames others without a thorough investigation and with unsubstantiated reasons, one should be suspicious of this technique. Is this technique always negative, or can it be useful? The scapegoating technique is negative, in most cases, as it leads to division and tension rather than solving the real problem. However, in certain specific situations, such as wars or severe crises, using this technique may be temporarily useful for garnering public support and creating unity. Nevertheless, frequent and excessive use of this technique, even in such situations, can lead to negative consequences. When should one resist scapegoating and how? Whenever you see that scapegoating, instead of helping to solve the problem, leads to division, mistrust, and increased tension, you should resist it. To counteract scapegoating, the first step is to examine the facts and base decisions on logical reasons rather than emotions. You can also ask challenging questions to others and request them to provide evidence and documentation. Creating an open and honest dialogue can also help mitigate the negative effects of this technique. Can this technique be completely eradicated? Completely eradicating this technique may be challenging as it is deeply rooted in human psychology. However, by increasing awareness, education, and strengthening critical thinking skills, the negative effects can be reduced, and a more resilient society against this technique can be built. These answers are just the beginning. In today's complex world, the ability to recognize and combat such techniques will help you resist any misuse of your emotions and beliefs. Chapter 7. A Light in the Darkness. In today's complex and tumultuous world, the scapegoating technique has become one of the most powerful and sometimes devastating tools. This technique, based on humans' tendency to find someone to blame in times of crisis, can quickly become a widespread and complex problem affecting individuals, organizations, and societies. However, as we have examined in this book, understanding and awareness of this technique is the first and most crucial step in combating it. Blame shifting, seemingly a simple solution to complex problems, can in reality lead to division, mistrust, and serious crises. Its negative effects on human relationships and social structures are evident. Proper understanding of this technique and its effects helps us, as individuals and members of society, to view issues more critically and provide logical and constructive solutions rather than succumbing to psychological and social pressures. To counteract these negative effects, it is crucial to adopt a culture of honesty, cooperation, and critical thinking. By focusing on these values, we can reduce the influence of scapegoating and create a more resilient and unified society. As you conclude this book, remember that the journey to understanding and combating the scapegoating technique is ongoing. Awareness and vigilance are your strongest tools. Embrace these values and apply them in your personal and social life to foster a more just and equitable environment.